All right, in this video, we are going to work on a JavaFX application, and in particular, we're going to work on just like a basic login screen. So, what we want to do is start a new JavaFX project. So, go to File, New, and then Other, then JavaFX project. All right, I'm going to call this login screen project. I'm going to keep the default location on the package. Click next. Uncheck that. Click next again. And I want to choose FXML. I'm going to go with an anchor pane. And I'm going to call it the FXML file login screen FXML. And the controller login screen controller, and click finish. All right, so next up is to lay out the login screen. So I'm going to right click on the FXML file and then open with Scene Builder. All right, in Scene Builder, then I'm going to click on the root component, this anchor pane down here in the hierarchy panel inside the document panel, and then go to layout over here in the inspector, and then it's 600 by 400. All right, so it'll pop up. Okay, so what I want to do is put in some controls here. I want to have an image over here sort of on the right hand side. So to do that, it is a image view. So I'm going to drag that over here. Okay, and then let's see. Okay. If I click that and go into properties, then I can select the image that I want. So the image I just have saved as a file on my file system, and let's see. What I want to do is add that here to application. Now you probably would have it under resources, make a separate resources folder to do that. So we could go ahead and do that as well. Now let's just go ahead and do that. And we'll make a new folder under login screen project called resources. All right, and then to add it, let's see, let me find it on my file system here. All right, and you can just drag it. All right, and so it's in the correct location there. All right, so going back here to Scene Builder, I want to put that image in here. So I go to Image, and then it's under Resources here is where I put it. So that goes right in there. Okay. Then underneath that, I want label. So under control, drag that in there. And another label below it. All right, so here that's user ID. And password. All right, so for the user ID, I'm going to use just a text field to capture that. So text field. And then for the password, there's a separate one, password field. So I'm going to use a password field. And the password field, it will obscure the characters, as the user is typing those in there. Okay. So that doesn't look great laid out like that, but I guess let's see, maybe if I center it, it'll look better. All right, maybe that looks slightly better. And then the last thing I want is another label down at the bottom for any messages that I want to display to the user. And so here in this label, I'm going to say invalid user ID or password. I'm going to center that, or try to center that up. And then delete that. Oops, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, here we go. It's just easier to give it the FX ID. All right, so I'm going to call this warning label. I'm going to give the label an FX ID. I am going to give this text field an ID, user ID text field. I'm going to give this one a password text field. And I'm going to give each of the text fields an on action, right? Handle login on both of those. Like so. And I think that's it. So it looks okay. All right, I'm going to save that. And then I am going to show sample controller skeleton, copy that out. And paste that into the controller. And then hover over this action event and add that in there. Make sure it's the JavaFX one. All right, so I should be able to run this now. Let's see, save that. Run this. And I'm getting this blank, which I got before. So let's see, close that out. Still getting a blank on that. All right, let me open it back up with Scene Builder and just check. Let's see if that, yeah, that looks fine. Yep, that all looks good. All right, there we go. I don't know why it does that sometimes. I may have figured that out at one point, but anyway, that's what it looks like. It looks pretty good except for the width here. So let's see. I always do this wrong. Is it 600, 400? Yeah. There we go. So that looks okay. All right, so I can type in a user ID, right, and a password, and then if I hit enter, right, nothing happens right now because I need to go and add some code to that, to the controller. Okay, so there we go. So far, so good. All right, taking a look at the controller right here, I want to add the code that handles the login. Okay, and so normally what you would do, right, is to check, you know, against the user IDs and passwords on from some other source. But just to keep things simple here, like a database or some other thing like that, a file. But just to keep things simple here, we're just going to hard code it into the application, which you would never do that in a real world situation. But again, we just want to keep things simple here. So what we would need to do is to get the user ID out of the user ID text field, so and store that in a variable. So user ID text field dot get text, and then get the password out. Okay, and then check the user ID and the password. So if user ID dot equals making up something, and all right, so here we're checking the user ID. Is it B Lumberg? And the password's 12345. All right, then we will set the warning label to login successful. And if not, then will display this message, invalid username or password. Generally speaking, right, if the login was successful, you'd go into another screen. Again, just to keep this example simple, we'll just, just display this message. Okay. All right. And one other thing that I would like to do here is to clear that message. That's in the warning label. So warning label dot set text and then the empty string, like so. So that will clear out the text that's in there, maybe only momentarily, but at least it will might kind of have the effect that maybe that the user can see that something is actually occurring, not that nothing's occurring here. So okay, so let's try that and see if it goes. All right, so first I'm just gonna type in some bad usernames and passwords. So you can see you get invalid username and password here. All right, and do another one. You really didn't get that effect in here, but I guess it's okay. And then type in the valid. And you can see the message changes to login successful, like that. Okay, so this is just an example of one way to do a login screen and some of the logic behind it. Obviously, it would be a little bit more complicated in general because, you wouldn't have one user, generally speaking, and you'd have a lot of users, so you'd have to go and check some other source and then fire up the next screen if the login was successful. But we'll talk about those in future videos.